Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to David Kennard, who is formerly the Managing Director of CityLink. And our subject matter today, amongst other things, is a book called CityLink, A Legacy Shattered, that was written by David. Thank you for joining us today, David.
You're welcome.
It's nice to meet you. So please give us an overview of CityLink on what it did and your idea behind the book.
CityLink was a high-speed express parcels carrier. I joined CityLink in 1970 and stayed as a van driver, and I stayed for 30 years when I went from van driver to managing director. After I left, I went on to other pastures, but having spent 30 years with the company and made lots of friends and acquaintances, I decided to write a book on my activities and my experience working in the express parcel sector. My book is called CityLink, A Legacy Shattered, which outlines the 30 years I spent with the company, plus the years after I left, when the company collapsed.
Okay, no, that's great. And, we'll talk more about the book later because I'm personally really interested in it myself. So what brought you originally into the lovely logistics sector yourself, David?
Well, I started off when I left college as a van driver, just to gain some money. And one of the customers that I came across was a company called CityLink, based in an old fish and chip shop in Marylebone. And it was from there that I worked for several months, and they asked me to join them. And rather than I didn't really fancy being a van driver for the rest of my life, so I did. And that's how I got into CityLink and the logistics industry.
Fantastic. Most of us, when we did this podcast, most of us sort of have fallen into it rather than planned to do it. And you're the same as us. So obviously you went from van driver to MD. So if you said, go through hopefully be in the book as well. But what was the trajectory? Was it through the operational side, the sales side, or a bit of both?
It was a bit of both. I mean, I started off running the London operation. The company changed hands many times, but I opened a depot in London in the King's Cross Freight Terminal, and then we opened various other depots around London. But most importantly, we had a network of agents around the country who delivered parcels on our behalf. These were mainly local taxi companies who later became franchisees. My boss at the time was a guy called Bob Thomas, who came from the air freight industry, and it was his idea to franchise our national network, which was something that was very new in the 70s. It'd never been done before. In fact, CityLink was the first parcels company to establish a franchise network. And towards the end, we had about 70 branches, 10 of which were owned by CityLink. The rest were franchisees trading as CityLink, and very successful it was.
Oh, well done. And whilst it's not the same, the pallet network sector is similar. They have members, but it's not a official franchise, but it works like a franchise model. But some of those also have, their wholly owned depots, particularly in critical areas. Sometimes central London, sometimes southwest, South Wales, Scotland. So no, I totally understand that. Okay, and I bet you had a great time and probably a wonderful career with CityLink, and obviously the title of the book is A Legacy Shattered. So without giving away what's in the book, because I'm looking forward to reading it myself, and we'll come back where we can get it from later. When you say a legacy shattered, is that what are your paint picture? What are your views on what happened to CityLink?
CityLink became a very well respected and very successful company. it grew very rapidly, and like successful companies that grow rapidly, there was a cash flow problem, and this company was acquired by the Securigard Group. They themselves were taken over by Rentokil, and not a great deal changed. The CityLink still acted as franchisor-franchisee relationship, but then those that in B at Rentokil decided that they would rather own the business themselves rather than rely on franchisees. At the same time, they went on the acquisition trail and focused on another parcel business called Target Express. A deal was done there. At the same time, they were buying out the CityLink franchisees. And that caused a lot of confusion amongst our customers, and also within CityLink itself, because Target Express then became part of CityLink. The franchisees, once they'd been paid off, became part of CityLink and hence part of Rentokil, of course. But then it all happened so quickly and without much thought, in my opinion, that suddenly CityLink had 2 Manchester depots, 3 Birmingham depots, 8 London depots, probably more actually, and it just the whole business fell apart, and customers were left in droves. Really, if you read my book, it's fully explained in there, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and ultimately, the CityLink model didn't work, and sadly, famously they finished, didn't they, on Christmas Eve? I think it was. I can't remember. It was 2014, I think. From memory.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's a good guess. Then. I should have checked that before we got on this, actually, David. So I apologise. That was a good guess, but it was certainly a shock to everyone, and what happened, and it was a sad ending to a great business, for sure, for everyone, and I'm sure people will be interested in the history of CityLink, them getting together with Rentokil, the purchase, and the sad, maybe they chose the wrong path to go down that way, that brought it back to the sad ending, really. And and when you was compiling the book, did you, how did you go about? Did you go back and meet some of the franchisees and partners that you'd worked with previously?
Yes, I did, as many as I could. I met both franchisees and ex-employees of CityLink to get their view, to get their opinion, and to listen to their experiences particularly during the period after I left the company, when all these acquisitions took place that I was referring to earlier. Yeah,
it must have been an interesting thing, to hear about when you spoke to ex-colleagues and friends. Must be very interesting, and also it's probably been a lesson to other companies, both inside the logistics sector and outside, that sometimes you can put 2 profitable businesses together, and sadly, the ultimate thing, it didn't work out for anyone, really, which is very sad. Yes,
that's right. It was very sad, given the amount of work that went in to get the company on its feet, and the efforts the franchisees made, and they were very successful, and really looked after their customers. And that was one of the main problems with defranchising the business, and putting sales all together under one roof, as it were. The customers had a relationship with their local CityLink franchisee, and now they were talking to a head office miles away, at the other end of the country. People didn't know who they were. It was a whole load of relationships were ruined, business relationships between the franchisees and the franchisees' customers in their own territory. It was very sad, very sad.
Yeah, business is all about relationships, isn't it, and support.
It is.
And when you speak to your local, franchisee or delivery partner, and you say this one's really urgent, can you do this for me? And they say they kind of gives you confidence, doesn't it, to pass on that problem, because the ultimate sender is representing either his own business or his own customers. So it's a very difficult thing. It's all about relationships, this whole sector, the logistics sector completely. Okay, good. So and obviously, having been managing director of a big business, and when you're looking at the sector now, if you were if I didn't know logistics at all, and I said, when you look at the sector, what do you think the biggest opportunities and threats are for the sector from a distance?
Well, just speaking now, where we are nowadays,
Please, yeah.
I think the biggest opportunities will be pick up and drop off. One thing is expanding the networks to help reduce high cost last mile deliveries, and I think a lot of people are going down that road. I mean, the last mile is always recognised to be the most expensive mile when you're delivering. I think autonomous vehicles and drones is something very interesting. It's maybe faster and efficient delivery, especially in urban areas. It'll improve customer convenience, and in fact, I think Amazon are even conducting trials with drones now. So that's something it'd be very interesting to see what happens there, and also with autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, I think certainly, in all conversations we have, obviously, lockers have become, the out of home solution is becoming a big thing for everyone because it's potentially greener. The drone things, this is me speaking, a slight cynic. Amazon have been droning on about drones for about 10 years, and they don't actually use them. And the last time I knew, I believe there's only 3 or 4 places that they were actually allowed to land. But certainly drones are useful for out of reach areas, particularly around the world. Maybe not so much in the UK. And I know some of the logistics companies are using electric planes actually to get to remote points, which is like a big drone really in reality. But yeah, certainly very interesting. And during your career, what surprised you most about logistics and the world? Is because a lot of people have talked about the development of e-commerce. Is that been it, or was it something else?
Yes, I think e-commerce is we've spoken about Amazon expanding their in-house delivery capabilities. I think increasing competition from traditional delivery services, drone delivery we've spoken about, and autonomous vehicles presents opportunities and threats to the traditional delivery models. Be very interesting. I think growth in e-commerce is attracting new players to the market, which will further intensify competition. In terms of green transition, I think evolution to electric vehicles for delivery and using sustainable packaging materials can reduce the environmental impact on the industry. That's already happening anyway. Electric vehicles.
Okay. And thank you for that, David. And I've got to come on to sort of our final question about speaking to the Prime Minister in a few seconds. But tell me about your book. How is it laid out? Is it done sort of over time? In the different chapters you've done.
Yes, it is. But time goes backwards and forwards. It's not in chronological order. There is a reason for that, and I do explain that in the book. And I hope it makes sense to my readers. But yes, fundamentally it is in time. But so many things went on over those 30 years in terms of CityLink looking at international markets, creating international deliveries, because when it's predominantly CityLink specialised in UK domestic, but we did go into international services, and that was very interesting. And that's a complete chapter. Well, so it's very difficult to have it in complete chronological order, but I have explained that in the book, and I hope the readers can follow that.
No, thank you. And also, you know, when you work in a business, as as businesses grow, you get growing pains. You talked about cash flow challenges. You sadly get more politics as you grow, which is a good thing and a bad thing. You get social and dynamic changes, like, you know, what customers are looking for. You said the transition from traditional business to business deliveries, and almost effectively express, almost same day type operations, to the business to consumer sector, and the challenges of delivering to households, which is a lot easier than it was, but it's still a challenge now, that's for sure. So,
yes, it is. I think AI-powered service chatbots are transforming customer interactions, I would say. A number of companies are introducing loyalty programs, so a bit like the supermarkets do, which is quite interesting. Some courier companies are offering custom delivery preferences to their clients, which I also find quite interesting. I don't know how they price that, mind you, but it's very interesting. All offerings really aimed at enhancing the customer satisfaction. Yeah.
And one of the things, I did a podcast last week that's been published a week or so, where was talking about how it works in different countries, but because there's such an experience of free delivery or low cost delivery, for consumers, that people generally go towards the cheapest option, whereas other European bourses, they actually have a charge, a proper charge for delivery, because as us as logisticians know, nothing is free, nothing is free at all. But they start off at a point, and then what they then do is, if you've got, say, a locker delivery, you might get a locker delivery for half the price, which makes sense, so there's a benefit.
It does make sense.
Yes. Yeah. And the idea is it reflects what is going on in actuality, rather than the dreaded term that's used in logistics, the race to the bottom, where everyone's undercutting prices, and overall the rate for the job goes down and down. So no, it's a really interesting and dynamic thing. And obviously, when we'll get a look at your book, that'd be great. As part of this, what we'll also do is I'll get a link from you, if that's okay, so you can show me where we can purchase it, and I'll put it on our LinkedIn podcast when we do it. Okay, thank you very much, David. And the last question I'm asking everyone is, if you could, and it's can be quite emotional for us all, this one at the moment, if you could speak to the Prime Minister, then what would you ask them to do to help businesses, maybe rather than your own businesses, to grow and flourish?
I thought about this one. I think reducing bureaucracy and red tape. I think a post-Brexit review is crucial. Many small, medium-sized companies struggle with costly delays from complex regulations compounded by international trade barriers like tariffs. I think skills and in terms of skills and workforce development, recruiting skilled workers is a persistent issue, and I'd like to know, what investment will the government make in vocational training and apprenticeships, and address the skills gap in the industry, and what steps will be taken to improve the availability of hiring skilled workers from overseas, because there's a huge shortage of drivers and warehouse people at the moment in the industry. And finally, I think, could the government consider targeting tax incentives or reliefs to encourage investment in research and development and green technology? And what long-term plans are in place to keep business taxes competitive?
Thank you. Good. I think that's a very good summary, and it's not too different to what other people have said to me, both anecdotally and on this podcast. We want UK PLC to grow and flourish. And so I just want to thank you again, David, and really look forward to seeing your book, CityLink: A Legacy Shattered. And we'll share a link to that where we can purchase it, and I'm sure those things will develop over time. Thank you very much for your time, David.
You're welcome, David. Thank you.